Hi, welcome to Unapologetically You, where we are talking about exhaustion, extreme exhaustion. Now, for the last two episodes, we talked about stimulant abuse, alcohol, mine and Kelly's personal stories of exhaustion. And then the second part, we talked about habits about exhaustion. So, what habits did we actually adopt because of that exhaustion? And also, we spoke to Catherine, who was a guest, talking about her circumstance and situation with exhaustion. So, today is the final part. So, part three on exhaustion. And we're going to talk about, again, Kelly and I talking about our personal experiences. But today, we're mostly going to talk about brain fog, the lack of concentration, fatigue, and disturbed sleep. So, if you haven't already, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, please do subscribe and click the notification bell. We would really, really appreciate you to be part of our community. We are also on Spotify and Podbean. So yeah, let's get into it. Hi, Cal, how are you?
Hey, Pulse, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. So we were talking about exhaustion on our last episode. So today we're going to be talking about brain fog. And I wanted to brain fog as, did you know, and like our audience may not know, I didn't know previously, but brain fog really isn't a medical or scientific term. It's really just something that describes feeling sluggish, fuzzy, not sharp. And scientists have actually said that if you get less than 7 hours of sleep, which is advised for adults, if you get less than, it can actually cause brain fog.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And I think that's why it's called mummy brain as well, because you're definitely getting less than 7 hours of sleep as a mum. And it's the same sensation. So as a new mum, when the kids or bubs were not sleeping well, and then at a time in my life when I was tired, exhausted, stressed, I wasn't sleeping well. And that brain fog feeling is the same. So yeah. Yep.
And what were the experiences of that lack of exhaustion, the brain fog, the disturbed sleep? Tell us some of the stories. Do you remember, like back when?
That's a really good
Like
point. Do I remember? It's a haze. It really is. It all blends into one another. And I think that's also why time goes really fast, or we always say, oh, time's gone really fast, but it is because you're in a fog, So I can't think necessarily, although I might as the podcast goes on, of any particular instances, but I guess I was just not present in the moment a lot of the time. I was just sort of, I heard an analogy today actually about that you're in a snowstorm and there's a tree there and you're headed toward that tree. So you know what you've got to do, but there's a blizzard, there's snow, foggy, you can't see through it, and there's wind blowing and you hear that, and they're distractions. Okay, so you're so easily distracted by this little thing and that shiny thing, and you get pulled in this direction and that direction, and all you're trying to do is get to that tree, and you actually, this is your ends up being your journey instead of that. Mm-hmm. And I think to me that's what brain fog felt like. I knew where I was supposed to be or what I was supposed to be doing, but oh my gosh, I just couldn't get there.
Yeah. And that's a really good way of describing something of your distractions skyrocketed. So something that could easily distract you has now just gone, okay, well, I'm concentrating on this task, but all of a sudden a notification hits or something happens, or you just get triggered by a thought and you kind of follow that train of thought. And then all of a sudden you're on the spiral. And there's actually, it's almost like a time lapse, isn't it? As you said, like it's hazy, but there's a time lapse where you forget why you walked into the room. You forget deadlines or things on your schedule. You might even forget to put the car in park. You know what I mean?
Things like that. Lock the door.
Something so simple. And it's like that time lapse where it's just like, oh, I got in the car and I don't know how I drove to work, because you're now on autopilot.
Yes, driving places. Yes, absolutely. That's a really good example.
And that's really dangerous, to be on the road, and to not be in that moment because you've got so much stimulus going around you.
Yes. Yes. And each of those little stimulus at that stage, I think, become stresses or little traumas, so they add on to the day. Little stress, little stressor, which just complicates everything and makes the exhaustion, or just sort of doubles down on the exhaustion.
Yeah, for sure. And this is the thing, decision-making capabilities. So if we're looking at, because obviously this podcast is emerging with hybrid performance for female leaders, you're talking about females who are in prominent leadership positions. They have to make big decisions on, hundreds of thousands of pounds on people's livelihood. Because, if the business doesn't make money, that means job cuts or redundancies. But the thing is, with those big decisions, if you're experiencing sleep loss, automatically your brain's in this brain fog, fatigue state. You're lacking concentration, you're getting disturbed and disrupted quite easily. You're going to be incapable of making those crucial decisions at that time.
Absolutely. And your body tends to be more in a sympathetic mode as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So, or is it parasympathetic? It goes up into parasympathetic, where your heart rate gets higher, your blood pressure gets higher, and it's harder to make good decisions. You can make decisions because you force yourself to, but it's harder to make a good decision. And that's actually a scientific fact. So when your heart rate reaches a certain percentage of your max heart rate or your lactate threshold, your decision-making skills are poorer, which is why being fitter is healthy and good for you, because your lactate threshold is higher. So your heart rate has to be at a higher level before your decision-making skills go worse. So that's one thing to be said for being fit. But if you're not, and I get it as a mum of any age children, really, like you just don't, you put yourself last a lot of the time. And that's not just being a mum, that's sometimes being human. You put yourself last. And we're kind of celebrated for doing that as well. Don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that is a societal thing, especially for mums, because it's like, now you've got this human that you need to look after, and your human self, that second, third, or fourth, whatever it is, because you have to take care of this human and keep it alive. That's your job right now. And then when you add into the mix taking care of the family home, or you've got more children to take care of, and then you might have to go back to work earlier than planned, depending on people's situations, this pressure point just ends up rising and rising. So yes, you're under more anxiety, more stress, but actually talking about that sleep deprivation is actually talking about that spiral. So I was reading the spiral of sleep deprivation and how we can fall into it. So it's like that insomnia spiral shows that you can go from normal sleep, which is at the top, it descends into occasionally disrupted sleep. You're increasing the intentional bias. So it's the changing the lifestyle, increasing the coffee, the alcohol, decreasing exercise. Then you're increasing you're decreasing your mental performance. So that comes after the lifestyle changes. Your distorted rest or even activity, you're probably over resting, which is a thing. You're then
absolutely
into depression, chronic fatigue, anxiety, and then that last element just at the bottom of the barrel is your chronic insomnia. So it's almost like it can actually start with just those occasional sessions of disrupted sleep. And if you've got a baby, you don't know what's going on with them, because it's like, well, okay, so I've had a crap night's sleep, but things still need to get done in the morning. I still need to work on the deadlines, and I still need to have the house functioning the way it does. And that's when you end up feeling those periods of just anxiety, stress, depression. And then you start to listen to that inner critic or that inner voice. That tends to get louder, doesn't it?
It's all you can hear sometimes. I don't think you hear, and people might give you a compliment, but you tend not to hear it or agree with it, or you know, put it away somewhere. And we should listen to and accept compliments, don't you think?
I think so. I think it's taken me a while to not brush it off. But
Me-
also, I remember, I can't remember whether I said this on a podcast. I remember saying it to a friend when I was, I'd probably say like 12 or 13 at the time. I was in the community centre with a bunch of girlfriends, and somebody asked me, just said, "Do you think you're pretty?" And I was like, I paused and I was like, "Yeah, I think so." So I just said, "Yeah." And in my brain during that pause was, I've got a friend who's been hospitalized because she's anorexic, and my best friend is suffering right now because of self-image. So actually, yeah, why not? Why not appreciate myself? And the look she gave me, one of my friends, right? The look she gave me just to be like, you're supposed to be humble right now. It was, she didn't say anything, it was just a look. And it was a kind of,
You have to
oh,
say anything.
yeah, you think you're so arrogant kind of thing. And then I'm just like, even though I narrated that, her version, it could not have been, you know. But part of me is just like, well, wait a second, why are we then even asking that question to our friends of, do you think you're pretty? And then wanting them to say no so you can get compliments. Like, what is this like weird psychology that girls do?
Yeah, it's a time waster, isn't it? Yeah, and this is why I don't think words like humble should be celebrated. I mean, there's humble and there's humble, and I think we sort of added a meaning to it that it didn't originally have that intent of meaning. Okay, so there are people like Gandhi who were humble. Okay, of course, and that probably is the truest and finest sense of the meaning. But you know, to say you don't think you're pretty when you do, or if you've never even thought about it, but that's the first time you've heard it, you go, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm not pretty, you know. But for that to be the wrong thing to say, I mean, at 12 years old, that can have a big impact.
I obviously remembered it.
Right, that's true. Yeah. And that was like just over 10 years ago. Hey, Tols.
I love it. Are you brain fogging right now?
Of the best kind, brain fog of the good kind.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's disturbed. And this is the thing. If we're brought up not accepting the compliments or not feeling comfortable in saying that we do feel pretty. And also, I read somewhere, I think, you know me, I love little memes and quotes. And it's actually your physical appearance, your attractiveness is the least interesting thing about you. And so when
Yes.
people would say you're pretty, I'm like, well, what does that even mean? Like, what does that get me? And I get that
Different things, different people,
and,
right?
and I and I get like when you're in bars, you'd get guys to buy you drinks. I never did that ever. I would always pay for my drinks, so I didn't want anybody to owe me. And I've always been like independent that way of just like, no, why would I even want free stuff? Like if one person pays, then you pay, right? It's like equal give and take. But part of me is like, I've never thought myself as somebody who's good looking to abuse that. I'm just like, well, who am I as a person? What am I giving? And what is this relationship?
Yeah. Which brings us back to what we were saying before we actually started recording, and we really wished we had been recording it. But 4 words that describe you, or 4 words that describe your values. So do you know those 4 words?
Off the top of my head, I know I've got them written down because I was doing it. I think I was doing it last year when I was talking to you about the Buddha and the badass. But I think
Mm.
for me, it's being sincere, being authentic, being compassionate, and love. For a long time, I blocked relationships on purpose, be it friendships, family, especially partners. And so for me, like I end with love because it's like, well, where is this coming from? Is this coming from the heart? Are you giving loyalty, compassion, and love? in this scenario, in this environment. And also, it doesn't matter if it's reciprocated, right? Because everybody's going through their own thing.
Everyone is, and not everyone values the same thing, and this is what we've got to remember and put value on, right? So I don't know what my 4 words are. I mean, I really tried to think of it today, and I went kindness was one that came. I want to be kind and known as kind, but there were more than 3 others, and so I've got to refine that down. But there might be someone else who wants to be smart and loyal, above and beyond kind. And so just because I'm kind doesn't mean someone else will think well of me because they go, she might be kind, but she's not smart, and smart's really a value that you want to have, So, yeah, interesting. But that takes us away from brain fog and away from our it kind of actually does tie into the exhaustion thing, because as we were saying, if you know those 4 values that you have, or refine it down to 4, then every decision you make has to reflect those values, which takes a lot of stress away from our daily decisions, right? And that's what we were saying. It would be less exhausting if we had like a decision tree to go, does this take me to where I want to be or how I want to be known? Yes, no, I'm doing it or I'm not doing it.
I think when it comes to fatigue, and when you've got decreased sleep, you've got decreased energy, reduced cognitive performance, you feel like you are losing control. When you feel like you're losing control, your adrenaline, your nervous system's becoming overactivated, and you're increasing your fight and flight adrenaline, really, because you're losing control and you're losing cognitive performance. That energy then ends up becoming just reduced completely. When you end up having a concoction of all those things, if you lose sight of your purpose, of your values, of the things that you are working towards, well, then you're not going to experience that brain fog or the fatigue state, because well, okay, this is a situation beyond my control. I am still in control of my thoughts, my actions, but when you're at that extreme fatigue state, you don't have that logical mindset. And that's where the decision making comes through. So actually, you're not going to go inwards and say, actually, what does Tulsi really want? Where is she coming from with these decisions from her heart? Because the inner critic is a little bit louder. So actually, the brain fog then ends up having this spiral. This is why it's very, very common when I was talking about the spiral right at the end of depression and anxiety, because actually you're not your normal self. You're not yourself who feels in control, and you've just ended up on this spiral.
Yeah, you're just a mirage of yourself.
Yeah. And there's that version of you who is self-assured, who is confident, and who is, attuned to those values, but right then they're not very prominent.
Right. That's right. And another thing that I listened to on another podcast, I've kind of lost my train of thought with that one. So you're saying there is a Kelly that is not confident. There is a Kelly that is unkind or complicated or anything. But if you have the best version of Kelly, and what would this best version of Kelly do? And there's a list of, a short list of good things that this person would do, and that's what you've got to choose from. There's not a whole spectrum of good, neutral, bad. There's this small spectrum of, they're your choices. If you want to be known as this person and you want to achieve these things, then these are the only choices you've got. And it also takes a lot of stress away from your day, right? If you have, like, this is me, I cannot go to, what's a store in the UK that has like a ton of things? It's like a Rebel Sport in Australia, anyway, you go into a store and there is just like a DFO where there's too much choice. I can't even go into those stores. I can't. I like to go into a store that has 3 black skirts, 3 pairs of jeans, and they're my choices, So that suits me.
Yeah. And this is the thing with society now. We are spoiled for choice. Like if you go to get a coffee, you're just like, well, which size do you want? Do you want syrup? Do you want half calf? Do you want decaf? Do you want like oat milk or soy milk or rice milk? It's like, I just want a black coffee. Like just make it easy, because actually that then goes back to that energy. If we are cycling our energy because we've got a minute amount during that day, our willpower is associated with that. So which means that every decision we're making, we're depleting the amount of willpower and decisions and energy we've got throughout that day, which actually means you're going to make bad choices when it gets to the end of the day. Well, no wonder you're going to reach for the ice cream in the freezer, because you've been good all day with your diet. And then you're just like, oh, you know what? I'm just exhausted. I don't want to cook. Let's just order takeaway. Let's just have the extra.
I don't want to make a decision. Yeah. Or I've got decision fatigue. Yeah.
Yeah. And that then ends up going back to that brain fog, because you're just like, you're trying to narrow down your field of what decisions you can make. And now it's like, at the end of the day, you've had to go into work, you've had to be authoritative, and you've had to control, what your family eats and what they're doing. And now it's got to the point where you're just like, I'm done, I'm exhausted. So then no wonder people don't want to then go, put their exercise clothes on and do some exercise, knowing that it will give them a little bit more energy.
And all the the hard work you've done all day with the good nutrition, and not just for you but for everyone, at the end of the day it's just a free-for-all and go, yeah, what's for dinner? I don't care, just have whatever you want. And so it's all ruined, and that doesn't make you feel good either, because you've put a lot of effort into 7/8 of the day, and that last little bit is just like
yeah, for sure. And this is the thing, like going to sleep. I remember reading a stat saying 1 in 4 people, I think this is an American stat, 1 in 4 people say they don't get to sleep well because of technology. So if you're looking at all these distractions, and this is why people don't like when I don't reply, my phone is on silent all the time, right? So I've got to be careful. So I'm just like, if I lose them, I'm screwed.
I know, honestly.
But no notifications. I'll have WhatsApp, but obviously my notifications are silent. I will check my emails when I want to. I will check social media when I want to, which means I'm a little bit delayed to get back to people. But really, for my sanity, I know the blue light disturbs my sleep. So part of me thinks that, what is it worth? Is it worth my lack of sleep? You and I both know that we are terrible when we don't get that much sleep. So actually, if you're not getting enough sleep, well, then your next day is going to be impacted. Yet, we're on our phones, we're like kind of consuming nonsense media information when actually we don't need it. And then we're ending up getting in our car the next day, probably hurtling down the motorway at 70 miles an hour, when we actually haven't woken up fully for that day. And actually, science has said that after 17 to 19 hours without sleep, your performance is equivalent to that of blood alcohol concentration of 0.05%. So if you wake up at 5 a.m., right, you're getting ready to go to work, you possibly finish at 6 p.m., meet your friends for drinks, it ends up being about 10:30 at night. You've had soft drinks, so you haven't drank all night, but by the time you drive home, your concentration is just as impaired as someone who's over the legal limit to drive. Like, that's scary.
It's very scary, especially, did you say driving at 70 miles an hour?
Well,
70,
yeah, that's the minimum requirement.
You left foot. But yeah, no, it is scary to be driving home with the concentration at the same levels of being completely, utterly drunk. So I know I wouldn't be able to do it. I need my sleep. I don't need long sleep. I need quality sleep.
Yes.
So 8 hours would be more than enough for me.
But this is the thing. We can't differentiate between quality and length. So what I've spoken to, like with James Hewitt, who was the head of science and innovation at HINSA, and now he's doing his own thing at Sustainable Performance, he would say, and we're using Whoop with our clients, saying, the thing is, it's easier for you to go to bed earlier rather than wake up later, because your body clock will naturally get you up into that circadian rhythm. right? It will naturally wake you up to when you're normally used to waking up. But if you can get to bed earlier, you're more likely to have that quality of deep sleep, REM sleep. And that way you can actually track your sleep. But actually saying, you don't know if you've had good quality sleep during that night, right? You could have woken up in the middle of the night, but still the quality of sleep is still fine because it's been trackable, traceable. So that's the thing. It's like you can then say you've gone to bed at 9, you've woken up at 6, for example. That's a long time to be asleep, but you could be laying in bed meditating, or you could be, having thoughts or listening to music, and that could take an hour. So it's almost like even though you're in bed, you're not really going to go to sleep because it takes around at least 20 minutes to get to sleep. So for those of people who are hitting the bed and going straight to sleep, that is a major sign of sleep deprivation. People think that, oh, you know what, I've worked really hard, or I've done my exercise, and as soon as I hit the pillow, I'm gone. Well, no, that's actually not a good sign to say that your body is actually desperately needing for you to go to sleep. You need more sleep.
So I'm not a quality sleeper. I'm a sleep deprived sleeper, because I do go to sleep pretty much as soon as I go to bed. I don't lie there. Yeah, look at your smug little face. All right, I'm going to go. I mean, I have done this at times too, just gone to bed and not necessarily gone to sleep.
Yeah.
And it does make me feel better. And like you say, I still wake up at the same time or earlier. And it's lovely. I love the early mornings. So, all right, I'll go back to that and report back.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, maybe we can recap on another podcast and you can tell us what difference it's made. But that is interesting. Because the thing is, it's like we were talking about in the previous in the previous episode. We don't know we're sleep deprived until somebody kind of shakes us awake or tells us and we may not even be able to listen at that point, right? But at that time when I was tired, I knew I would wake up at stupid o'clock in the morning. But the biggest difference for me is those lapses in concentration during the day. So when I ended up sleeping a little bit better or meditating a little bit more, what ended up happening was my concentration levels boosted. I was able to remember things without having to write them down, without actually having to check my diary. And those are big deal. Like the thing is, it's almost like if you've got your foot on the gas pedal and you think you are going like really fast and your speedometer is only saying 50 miles an hour, the thing is, you don't know how much capability you've got in your engine. So it's almost like actually, if you take the speedometer and you can actually take it off its limit, and now you've adjusted the brake pedal, you've got it serviced, you've actually taken time to take care of your engine, you've put good fuel in, and then you realize actually 50 miles an hour is pretty slow, but now I can pelt it. And this is the variation between going on cruise control, but actually accelerating when you really need that moment in time, right? Whereas people think with 6-7 hours, oh, I'm fine, I'm concentrating. But wait a second, wait until you get 7 to 8 hours and see how much you perform, right?
Oh, let's wait and see what I can do when I get more than 8. I mean, 8 hours I'm good at, but I do fall asleep straight away. So maybe I'm a 9-hour, 10-hour girl. We will see.
I know I'm an 8 to 9 hour girl because for sure. My Whoop app actually confirms this, but not only that, again, my Whoop says I'll be asleep at say 10, but actually I've been in bed meditating, and I know it'll take me a little while to just kind of quieten my thoughts and just slow down my breath and get into the space where I'm relaxing my muscles. Like even going through some muscle relaxation just helps you fall asleep nicely, right? And the thing is, whatever you're thinking about before bed, you're going to be waking up to. So why not go to bed with great thoughts? Because actually that's going to carry on the next morning. And that's why gratitude is really, really important as well. So actually just say, what things are you grateful for today? What ended up really, really well. And for me, I was telling a friend, I was like, okay, so I write down 3 things I'm grateful for, and also what I've learned during that day, because I'm a big thing of what have I learned? What have I actually learned in my life today? And then also what my intention is for tomorrow. So actually closing and bookending that day, then going into meditation and waking up satisfied, fulfilled, energetic. Like, why aren't we all doing that, right?
Yeah, why aren't we all doing that? I know, absolutely. And look, sometimes it is because you can be tired, but you can operate. Now, you're not operating at your potential, but you can operate. And so sometimes getting more sleep is the hardest thing of all, because we travel. Not so much right now in the pandemic time, but there are times when, especially living in Sydney, travel was unavoidable. In my job, I would travel up to 2 hours each way. So there's 4 hours. And then, there's things to do after you get home. And you're just so wound up anyway that you can't actually go to sleep.
Yeah,
straight away.
Wired, right?
So sleep sometimes is the hardest. It's exactly. So it should be the easiest thing to change. And I don't know if you tell yourself you can't do it because sometimes it feels like it's the hardest thing to change. But maybe you've got to work out a way, Tulsi, where the decisions you make during the day are a bit more streamlined. And this will be in the course, right? So how to streamline your decisions during the day so that you do give yourself an extra. How good would an extra hour a day be, to meditate? But you do have to dedicate that extra time that you make for yourself to something for yourself. Okay, so good nutrition, meditation, sleep. What are the other things?
Exercise.
Exercise, yes. But it doesn't have to be an hour of exercise, and a lot of people think it does, or it doesn't even have to be half an hour of exercise, but it does have to be very pointed exercise and specific exercise for your goals and your current ability. So if you go above and beyond your current ability, then you're going into overload and you need more of the sleep that you're not getting. So again, this is how Fitness Chicks fits right in, because it's really dedicated to progressing the ability so that you don't do more exercise but then need more sleep. So you've taken an hour or added an hour to your day, but then you need an extra hour of sleep. So you've really added 2 hours to your very full day.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is why Tulsi
I think about looking at the overall aspect of your day. Like, yes, your willpower will deplete as you go on. Your decision-making capabilities will deplete. And that's if you've had a really good sleep, right? But what we're failing to remember is food is a stimulant. It basically is a stressor because it gives your body that extra regeneration to say, well, these things are needed for these cells in this area. We don't know what's going on in our body. We don't know how it's healing. Same with exercise. It is a stressor. So if you've gone through an exerting day where you've had lots of calls, you've had lots of meetings, you're completely drained cognitively, and then you go home to do a HIIT session or a conditioning session going, I need to sweat it out. Well, it's just like you said, Cal, that's actually not indicative and it's not inducive of actually recovery for sleep. I'm not saying that cognitively it's good. For people to de-stress, they may want to have a hard session. But really, if you're looking at the overall aspect of your day, what are you balancing out and what are you sacrificing? So actually then going into this high intensity session, it's not conducive to your reproduction, to your sleep, to actually have a good night's sleep. It could be, and this is what Fitness Chicks does, is slow, mobility exercises, flexibility work, low impact work. So actually it suits women because you don't need high intensity as you get older. You need strength training, you need resistance training, but you need mobility work, right?
Yeah, movement. It's good for the brain as well as, your body. But I think it's been pretty well established that you can't out-exercise a bad diet. So nutrition is the number one part of having a good, healthy-looking body. Okay, and exercise is like the bookend on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes you exercise, I find, is what's the word? It stops you sabotaging yourself. So if you have a good exercise session, you don't want to then go and eat all the chocolate bars because you're just sabotaging what you've just done. So self-sabotage. And so for a lot of people that the exercise stops them eating poorly, I get it. And if that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. But I think placing a primary focus on nutrition and a slightly secondary focus on exercise, especially when you are feeling tired, near exhaustion, is the way to go about that.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said self-sabotage, because Kelly's given us a little bit of a hint for you guys who are listening that the next episodes will deal with self-sabotage. So not only will Kelly and I talk about our personal stories of self-sabotage, but we're going to delve into very specific signs of self-sabotage and how we can start to overcome them. So thank you all for listening to us talk about everything today, and the previous episodes about exhaustion, brain fog, and lacking concentration and sleep, most importantly. So in the next episode, stay tuned, will be about self-sabotage. And if you liked this episode, please let us know in the comments below. And also don't forget to subscribe to YouTube and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on future episodes if you are watching on YouTube. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, Cal.
Thank you. Thank you, Tulsi. We always have a good conversation, don't we?
We do, we do. I'll see you on the next one.
We will. Okay, have a good night.
Bye.
Or day. Bye.